color anything else to mar the wonderful grandeur, the sublimity, the great loneliness and beauty of the canyon. Leave it as it is. You cannot improve upon it. The ages have been at work on it, and man can only mar it. Then Litton started laying into Robinson's arguments. Unfortunately, no one bothered to transcribe his words, but the gist of the stem winder he uncorked is well remembered to this day. He began by declaring that it didn't matter a hoot of difference that the canyon might not look any different from the top as the dams were put in. The river was the essence of the place, its heart, the thing that had not only carved and shaped the rock, but also sustained the unique and fragile ecosystem at the bottom. If the river were dammed, the spirit of that place would vanish, and what replaced it would be a poor substitute. A pair of stagnant reservoirs whose surfaces would endlessly and noisily be crisscrossed by powerboats and houseboats and water skiers. What this amounted to, Litton continued, was the annulment of a space whose value resided not in the fact that it was accessible, but rather in that it was isolated and untrammeled. Indeed, access to the masses was the very thing that would destroy what made the place so precious, by canceling out those elements that the canyon now possessed in abundance: the silence, the solitude, and the fact that it was so implacably cut off from the rest of the world. Those qualities were as fragile as a little wooden boat. And as Roosevelt's words clearly implied, the willingness to nurture and protect such treasures amounted to a national test of character, as well as a covenant with future generations of Americans. A test that the Interior Department and the Bureau of Reclamation had demonstrably failed. Inside the canyon, Litton thundered, Interior and Reclamation are interlopers, and we don't have to surrender to their scheme because the place don't belong to them. It's our canyon. It's our national park. As for the idea that the government was too big and powerful to confront head-on, Litton's contempt was scathing. Of course it'll be an uphill battle, he said. Of course our resources are limited and our numbers are few. But in God's name, how can anyone in this room look themselves in the mirror if we don't resolve to go after this with everything we've got? Historians often minimize or discount the impact that any one individual can have on human destiny, and for good reason. Given the broad tides in the affairs of men and the complexity of the forces that shape and change history, it's almost always a mistake to ascribe too much significance to the actions of a single person. But even the most jaded observer can concede that every now and then, a man or a woman steps up to the plate and takes a mighty swing that clears the bases and fundamentally changes the game. In the Jack London Hotel that morning, this is what Litton achieved. After an hour and a half of debate, it was moved that the club should oppose any further dams and diversions in the canyon. The motion carried. Many years later, when asked how he had primed Litton for his presentation, Brower chuckled. Martin don't have to prime for his speech, he replied. Martin poured it on, what a ridiculous thing this would be to do, and the audience applauded, investors subsided, and we voted no. Later that afternoon, when the meeting had wrapped up, Litton was sitting out in the hotel's lobby having a drink with a friend when Robinson approached their table. Well now, just because we don't agree on everything don't mean we're not friends, Robinson said, extending his hand agreeably to Litton. Oh, Litton retorted. I wouldn't say that. Thank you, Martin, for this.